Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We are going to get started in just a few minutes. Thank you again for being here. Just a reminder, throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to utilize the chat feature, and there will be a dedicated Q&A session at the end. Thanks.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Dr. Libby Saunier, and I'm the Executive Director of the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. As an independent source of data, research, and pertinent information for policymakers, the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children works to shed light on the state of early care and education in Louisiana. Alongside our partners, the Policy Institute has been surveying Louisiana parents with young children as a part of our larger efforts to help understand the impact of COVID-19 on families and childcare in Louisiana. This year's report, Now More Than Ever, a snapshot of how Louisiana working families rely on childcare, was compiled from the survey findings from October 10th through November 3rd, 2021. This report is especially important as our state continues to feel the impacts of COVID-19, the recovery from Hurricane Ida, and the national childcare shortage. I'm thrilled you all can be here today to hear from our panelists as they share the top 4 takeaways and insights from this survey. Before I introduce our moderator for today's press conference, I want to take a moment to thank the Louisiana Department of Education, Women United of Southeast Louisiana, and Agenda for Children for helping make this work possible. At this time, it's my great honor to introduce today's moderator and my friend, Charmaine Caccioppi, President and CEO of the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of United Way of Southeast Louisiana. Charmaine's work advocating for all Louisiana's children has resulted in far-reaching success, including security for the state's first ever EITC state match, passage of the child care tax credits, and more things than I can even list today. Thank you so much, Charmaine, for joining us today and leading us.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Libby, for that wonderful introduction. And I especially would like to thank the entire Policy Institute team for hosting today's virtual program. It's my honor to serve as moderator for today's program as we share the findings from the Policy Institute's latest report entitled, Now More Than Ever, a snapshot of exactly how Louisiana working families rely on childcare. This survey provides many helpful insights into the needs and challenges of families with young children throughout Louisiana as we look to recover from COVID-19. Throughout today's program, I encourage each and every one of you to fully utilize that chat box to share any questions that you may have. There will be dedicated time at the conclusion of this event for a question and answer session. We will try to answer and address any and all questions you may have. So with that, it is now my esteemed pleasure to welcome our very first panelist for today. Please join me in welcoming Scott Tippett, Louisiana State Manager for Save the Children Action Network. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you for the introduction, Charmaine. It's an honor to be with you today. According to the latest survey, Louisiana families with young children continue to rely on childcare and make decisions about childcare based on factors that support parent employment and education. To provide a bit of background, most responding parents were working or in school full-time and outside of the home. Although the unemployment rate was twice as high for parents with family income below $20,000 per year. In 2021, over 80% of families with young children relied on some type of formal childcare outside the home, an increase compared to 2020. Formal childcare options include childcare centers, preschools in a school, Head Start or early Head Start, family or home-based childcare providers, and employer-sponsored childcare at a workplace. Parents on average reported their children were in childcare for 39 hours per week. Parents also indicated the main reasons for using childcare arrangements were hours and availability, trust in the provider, convenient location, and quality. Just over half of parents experienced some sort of adjustment to their work or school schedule to provide childcare in the previous 6 months. When looking at the differences across the state, parents in the capital region were more likely to have altered their work hours and schedules or the way they worked, including working remotely or outside business hours to provide care for their children, which is certainly something I can attest to, being that I have a 2.5-year-old and I can remember some long 10 o'clock at night still working. So parents with a family income below $20,000 per year were twice as likely to have quit their job in order to care for their children. And finally, families with young children need care to go to work and to go to school. Lack of reliable childcare leads to costly parental absences for Louisiana businesses, specifically a $762 million annual loss for missed work, turnovers, and other related costs, and a staggering $1.3 billion annual loss to the Louisiana economy. This is an issue that affects all of us, and not just those with young children at home.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, for sharing those key findings. Next, I am more than pleased to introduce and welcome our parent leader from Ouachita Parish, Brianna Williams. Please join me in welcoming Brianna to today's panel.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I am a single parent of a 1 and a 4-year-old, so I am so grateful to be here today to join you guys in getting things taken care of. This latest survey shows us that the cost of childcare remains high, with childcare costing the average family, Louisiana family, almost $9,000 a year. On an average, families in Louisiana are paying $358 per child per month for childcare. For a family with 2 children, that would translate to $8,600 per year. Rates are especially high for families with infants or different needs and levels of care. For example, families with infants paid $480 per child per month, over 1/3 the state average for childcare. Finally, for a family with 2 children not receiving any subsidized care, the average cost of childcare is over $15,000 a year. This exceeds what it costs for 1 year of college tuition. Nearly 60% of families responding to the survey received some type of subsidized childcare in 2021, either through enrollment in the Child Care Assistance Program, also known as CCAP, and or free child care program, which is an increase from 2020. As a reminder, these families are still responsible for making up the difference between what a CCAP subsidy will cover and what providers must charge in tuition. In 2021, Louisiana made policy changes to benefit families eligible for the Child Care Assistance Program, also known as CCAP, the state's only publicly funded program for children under age 4. These policies changes include increasing the subsidy rate paid to child care centers, and expanding eligibility standards, enabling more families to include a wider option of providers in child care decisions. Despite these policy wins, affordable, high-quality early care and education still remains out of reach for many families.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Brianna, for these key findings. I think it's just so extremely important that people understand and that we are able to help ourselves understand firsthand the high cost of childcare and what it means to our working families across Louisiana. Next, I am more than pleased to welcome our next panelist, Marlin Hollins, Director of Community Engagement at the Urban League of Louisiana. Please join me in welcoming Marlin.
Thanks, Charmaine. Whether you're dialing in from Louisiana or joining us from afar, thank you for being with us today. I'd like to remind you to utilize the chat box with any questions you may have. The Policy Institute's latest parent survey shows that without subsidies, the child care and other household essentials, working families with young children will struggle even more to afford basic necessities. For reference, in 2021, half of the parents were concerned about being unable to afford childcare. Over half of parents also indicated having trouble paying the basic household expenses, including utilities, childcare, food, clothing, in the prior 6 months. While these numbers are high, they disproportionately impact families in certain regions and income brackets. For example, parents in Southwest and Northwest Louisiana, as well as those with family incomes between $35,000 and $100,000 per year, were more likely to be concerned about the inability to afford childcare than other regions of the state. Parents in Northwest Louisiana and those family incomes below $50,000 per year were more likely to have trouble paying for basic household expenses. When looking at current avenues for support, over half of parents claimed or plan to claim school readiness tax credits for child care expenses on their 2020 Louisiana tax return. And most reported receiving the monthly federal child care tax credit payments that began July 2021. Data from the United Way's ALICE report has shown that child care is often the most expensive item in a family's budget. Subsidies such as state school readiness tax credits for child care expenses and the monthly federal child tax credit payments can help ensure that families, particularly low-income families, can afford care for their young children without having to borrow money or forego expenses. Unfortunately, at the federal level, Congress has let the expanded child care tax credit expire, returning the tax credit to pre-pandemic version that failed to help our neediest families, and it's unclear if the issue will be addressed anytime soon.
Well, thank you again, Marlin, for those extraordinary facts. I think you've helped to clarify just how critically important this is to working families. It is now my pleasure to say that we have one final finding to showcase as part of today's program. Please join with me in welcoming our parent leader, Vera Chavez from Orleans Parish, as she shares today's fourth finding. Please, Shavera.
Good morning. Thank you, Charmaine, and thank you to everyone involved in compiling and sharing this report. The final finding to share today is that many families still experience childcare challenges due to COVID-19 and the struggle to easily find childcare. Almost 1/4 of parents said it was difficult to find their current childcare arrangements. And as with previous findings, we see that these difficulties vary by region. Families in the capital region, Southwest Louisiana, and as well as parents who didn't receive any type of subsidized care, reported more likely to experience difficulty finding childcare. This report also shows us that parents continue to have concerns related to the ongoing pandemic with 60% of parents concerned about the spread of COVID through childcare. Over 3/4 of parents reported to have to take at least one day off work in the last 3 months because of a childcare closure. And the Policy Institute survey of childcare providers found that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to result in childcare closures. This trend is likely to continue since we're now experiencing yet another wave with the Omicron variant. It's critical that we support families by continuing to support the childcare sector while they continue to face the financial impacts caused by the pandemic so they can continue to serve young children. And families need to be able to find and choose high quality early care and education programs that work best for their children. Now I'd like to once again welcome Dr. Saunier, Executive Director of the Policy Institute, for some final remarks.
Thanks so much, Sharuba. And thank you to all the presenters, stakeholders, board members, media members, members of the Policy Institute, and partners for participating in this important discussion. These survey results show us that working families rely on childcare and that childcare challenges impact workforce participation. To support working families and their employers, Louisiana must do 3 things. 1, we need to increase state investment in the early care and education sector to expand access to high quality childcare, especially for children birth through age 3, which will prepare our students for a smart start in life, enable families to be productive in the workforce, and serve as an economic engine for local communities. 2, continue to use federal stimulus and COVID-19 relief funds to stabilize the childcare sector to increase the availability of quality, reliable childcare for working parents. And 3, encourage multiple streams of investment into the early care and education system, including supporting local government efforts to generate revenue through both state enabling legislation and sufficient incentivizing investment into the Louisiana Early Childhood Education Fund. Thank you again to everyone who participated in today's virtual event.
Well, thank you, Libby. And I know that we will transition into the Q&A part of the program. I'm looking at the chat, and from my viewpoint, I don't see that we have any questions just yet. So please feel free, anyone that's joining us today, to actually type in a question. We would love to be able to hear from you and address any concerns or questions you may have as it relates to the incredible information that we've shared with you today. If not, Libby, I certainly would like to transition back to you, because I know that you're going to share with us some oops, look, we finally have someone. How will the federal child tax credit payments that ended last year affect the current situation? So Libby, I say go ahead.
Well, that's quite a question. Thanks so much for asking that. Well, right now, those federal child care tax credit payments, they ended at the end of the calendar year. And so, there are many advocates that are really pushing hard for those to be reinstated to help support families in affording childcare and basic needs of families. What we know from research is very clear, and this is national research, that when families get those kinds of dollars, like the federal child tax credit, that they do infuse them into their budget, and it's a budget that they need to be able to plug dollars in, and so that they can definitely be helpful. But how that helps us move forward, we don't know until we find out if the tax credits come back to families.
Well, I can tell you, we're sure hoping that they do, Libby. I know with the work that United Way of Southeast Louisiana has been doing on an anti-poverty agenda, along with all of you, we know what this means for lifting children out of poverty. And it's so important to our working families. If there are no other questions that are coming into the chat, Libby, I would certainly give you the opportunity to actually close us out today. Oh, one
Absolutely.
more.
Oh, Ebony.
Ebony.
Are there any current Louisiana legislative bills we need to be aware of that are planned for upcoming session? Well, I would say,
yes,
Well, yes, and watch the governor's budget. Yesterday he announced, and then again today, that he has put $43 million in the state budget for early care and education, 17 million of it going towards the LA4 program that's been underfunded for years, and then 25 million to go to help expand child care assistance. And so we're thrilled about that, and we're unpacking some more of the budget now related to supplemental, but I would say watch the budget is the main thing. And Charmaine, what else would you add? Anything else?
I would certainly say that everyone here is represented by someone in the House or the Senate. Make sure that you reach out to your legislators and let them know how critically important increased investment in early care and education is. Encourage them to support the recommendations that have been provided by the governor and this administration, but more importantly, tell them what this issue means to you and your community, and reiterate the economic implications that are associated with this, and ask them for their full support.
Absolutely. Does that increase the governor's program? We're not sure yet. I know that the funding, the 17 million went to LA4, and we're not sure if that will impact the governor's budget. The governor's preschool program, the 4-year-old program there. But stay tuned. We'll keep up with it at the Policy Institute. And this, I know that United Way of Southeast Louisiana also keeps up with it, as we're glued to the hip during this time of the year to make sure that we're keeping a hold of what's happening in the state legislature. But I'll take this opportunity to share some exciting news with you all before we close out today. I'd like to share some information about the Louisiana Early Ed Month, which will feature events that are highlighted throughout February 2022. For the past 5 years, we've celebrated Early Education Week. And next week, we will kick off the first annual Louisiana Early Ed Month. On Tuesday, February 1st, Dr. June Lee will deliver a keynote address about the essence of quality, focusing on human interactions with teachers. Dr. Lee currently serves as the co-chair at the Human Development and Education Program and the Saul Science Senior Lecturer in Early Childhood Education at Harvard, at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And then on Thursday, February 10th, we invite you to participate as we celebrate a social media day of action. We'll be sharing a social media toolkit with you following all of today's events so that you can learn how to join our social media day. And then on Tuesday, February 15th at 6 p.m., we invite all parents and guardians or anyone who wants to learn how to advocate for Louisiana's youngest learners to join us for our Louisiana Early Ed Month parent advocacy training. We're really excited about this and hope many of you can join us. We hope you can join us for these Early Ed Month activities. And thank you again for attending today's press conference. And we hope you have a good rest of the day. And then if there's any media here, there's a note in the chat box. But again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to Charmaine for leading us in this discussion. And I wanted to also share, this is the first time we've had daddies on a panel. And this is a big deal. And so thank you. And thank you to both Sharuba and to Brianna too for stepping up and always being willing when we asked to do something. So thank y'all so much.